So this is hand number 4 with the Akron game. I'm not sure what it's called. I've already lost 1 life, so in order to continue the game you have to tap, and you control the platform with the accelerometer. For each brick that is destroyed, 10 points are gained, and you start off with 5 lives. Like I said, I already lost 1. So again, tap to continue. Let's see what happens when all lives are lost. So game over, you can see the score and flick the screen. And here we go again. So lives are 5, score is 0, and that's the game. So if we take a look at the code real quick. I use the Keitai interface for the gestures, and I use Keitai sensors to get the accelerometer, and the Android to view the motion events for the user interface, the gestures. So create a gesture and a sensor with the Keitai, and then I have a lot of different variables that I use in order to determine well, we're actually gonna get to it. Alright, in setup, I set the orientation to landscape, get a new Keitai gesture and Keitai sensor, start the sensor. The size is the display width and display height, so it can adjust itself to different devices. Set text size to 23. I create an array, which it's an array of these elements that are box, this class that I can actually create in this tab here. I have a class box that has an int of x and y and a color that is randomized, and I have a function render for it, which sets the color and draws a rectangle with the width of the screen over 10 and the height of the screen over 9. So I create this new array list and I populate it, going for I, as long as it's smaller than the width, and I increment it by width over 10, so every time by the width of each box. And it's a double for loop. I have j, which is less than height over divided by 3, and j is incremented by height over 9, the height of the box. And thank you, Selga. Bless you. My list, I just add a new the new item where I send the I and the j coordinates. I actually sent I as well as an identifier, but ended up not using that. So I set the fill 228, and this is my platform. It starts off at width divided by 2 in the middle of the screen, and the height of it is set to height -5, so almost at the bottom of the screen. Nice. This is all going on the internet. I'm not making a new one, just so you know. Yeah, so start ellipse. At the middle of the top screen. So I started at the middle, and I also started at height over 3. This is based on code that I got in a processing.org, which is in order to show a collision. So I also said a random direction. Calculate the direction vector. And I start my draw function. I start with the background with fill of black, and I set the alpha to 12, so it actually gets this effect. And later on I use a rect mode of center, and I realized that I need to I thought it would be by default, but if I don't add it here, all my rectangles are set for center. So I just put this here, and I draw that box, which is almost the size of the whole screen, except that my height -10, because I don't want the moving platform, I don't want the player platform to leave a trace like the other elements. And this is that bottom bar that is left. And I fill it with black with no opacity. So here I draw the boxes. I go through my list backwards because I used list size, and of course -1 because we start at 0, checking as long as I'm bigger or equal to 0, and I minus, so basically going back through the elements. Then I have this box O, which I get from my I, so I start with element, I have 30 elements, start with element number 29. I call for render, and I check if the ellipse Y that I draw is smaller than the Y of the object plus the height over 9, because right now this point is the corner and I need the bottom. This is the upper corner and I need the lower line. I also check for the ellipse X over the box point X, and as well as long as it's smaller than the box, the object box X, plus the width over 10. So between the two, basically the distance or the length of the box. If that happens, that means that actually that the ellipse, the ball, has touched one of the boxes, and in that case I make sure that the height, that the ellipse Y is actually set to the Y of the box, or the bottom line of the box. I change the direction of the ball. I add 10 points to the score, and I remove the ith element, the box. These are the bases that are used to calculate the vectors. These are the bases of the player platform. This is the text for the score and lives, and if lives is less than 0, then we get game over. And actually, I have a boolean lost that is set to true that I'm going to use later in an if statement. Okay. So this is my playing platform. I set it, drawing it red. Here I'm calculating the length of the base, top, the fill, calculating. Yeah. Oh my god. The joys of making videos at home. I draw an ellipse. And yeah, I make it white. And the ellipse is ellipse x and ellipse y that I declared already in there at the setup. And I have the radiuses also declared at the setup. And these are my velocities that I'm going to use for the direction. Moving the ellipse, creating the motion, and creating the vectors. And now we're checking for collision, checking the distance in order to calculate the counter distance, or the opposite angle equal opposite angle. It's just drawing some assisting lines. I could actually remove that. And yeah, this is just code that I commented out because even though I set the phone to landscape, the X and the Y retained as if it was portrait. Ooh. As if it's portrait. So it took me some time to figure that out. Where did we go? We've seen all this. Yep. So now detecting collisions with the right wall, the left wall, if it's greater than the width minus the ellipse radius, switch it. Same as the collision with the boxes. If it's with the left and top, what happens in the bottom is that if it's bigger than height and life is set to false, that is the initial condition, lives loses 1 and life is set to true. And I use this later on let's just jump straight to this, waiting for the user to be ready, because if life is set to true, on tap, if life is set to true, we set the ellipse again, the width, the height, the position, the fill, and I actually draw it and set life to false again. I have another function here, an accelerometer event, where the platform X position is gained from, I'm turning in the whole thing, inting the whole thing, mapping the Y position, which is from minus 10 to 10, and mapping it to 0, between 0 and width. So that's how we move the platform. In order to, once the game is over, I have a function which is unflick, which gets all these different variables. So if lost is true, that was the condition we checked before, because loss of lives, I reset the lives to 5, reset the score to 0, change lost to true, draw all the boxes again, and draw a new ellipse. And these two are to actually make sure that the phone is getting the information from the touch from the interface. That's it.